Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to today's live video on the Midheaven. This is one of my favorite things. And in astrology, the Midheaven is going to tell you about your highest potential. It's going to be a career indicator, but it's also, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood placements in the chart. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you about what it means. We're going to demystify some of the things about the midheaven and bring it down to earth in a way that it is understandable and usable and something you can actually practice and follow in your life. So, welcome to anyone who's new to the channel. Welcome back to everyone who's been around here for a while. And you guys feel free to let me know in the comments, do you feel like you understand your midheaven? Do you feel like you know what it means? Are you using it in your life? Have you looked at it and gotten stuck? Or are you like, I've never heard of this before? Let me know in the comments, what is your current understanding of the midheaven in astrology? And like I said, today we are going to go through what the midheaven means through the different signs. I'm going to tell you about this. And then we are going to, and before that, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the midheaven means. And we are live today, but if you're watching the replay, everything we are covering is just as good. So, just know that this is still watchable, whether you are here live with us or whether you are watching afterwards. And at some point, there will probably be timestamps. But when it's live, that takes some time. So for those of you who catch it, a few hours after the live, sometimes I haven't done them yet. So that's just how that goes. I see a lot of people commenting, where are the timestamps? So that's why. And for those of you who have been commenting timestamps or have been, helping out with the channel in those ways, I greatly appreciate it. It helps me so much. I use them when I go in to make the timestamps. So thank you for that. So I'm going to say hi to everyone who's jumping on in the chat. We have Sarah Lee says not exactly. So you don't exactly know how to use your midheaven. For Wild Turkey says hi. Flower Remedy, hello. Chrissy, hey. Sarah Lee says midheaven in Aquarius. Chrissy has Pisces midheaven. Snakebite says, when do your MC analysis do you use whole sign or Placidus? So the cool thing about the midheaven itself is that it is the same in either one. I honestly, I will use both, but sometimes I'm going to use whole sign for something like this. When it comes to analyzing the ruler of the midheaven and what house it's in. But for most people, that only changes. Sometimes it changes the house that the ruler of the midheaven is in. Sometimes it doesn't. So I do like both points. But as far as the actual point of the midheaven, it doesn't change. And I see what you're saying, Snakebite, is that sometimes when you use whole sign, when you use Placidus, you're going to see the midheaven on the cusp of the 10th house. Let's pull up a chart to show this, and then we'll get into some of the content here. So let me pull it up. And let me fix this really quick. I think it's this one. No, well, maybe. Can you guys see me on this? I need to check. I need to do this anyway. I need to check the actual live really quick. I heard someone recently say my sound is too quiet. So I kind of want to check that too. And then we will get into all these beautiful things we're covering, which is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, let me see here. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. Okay, so what does Sunganuk Midheaven mean? Katie, I have a video on this, so you might have to look under Midheaven or 10th house. I think the video is on planets in the 10th house. And yes, okay, thank you, SB. I do like your comment. I like your point here. I think I missed it earlier, so let's show your comment. SB is saying, I have a Taurus Midheaven. I find it kind of useful, but it's often so broad in this crazy changing job landscape. I think the Midheaven is a broad sort of point that is often misinterpreted because what we want to do, and you'll see, like I'll see astrology, like articles or blogs online that say like, oh, Scorpio Midheaven can do research, and that is sometimes true. But we will talk about why your Midheaven is not your job. And this is a confusing thing for a lot of people. So thank you so much for saying that. And I think you were talking about the job landscape, but it inspired me to address that. So thank you. Randolph, I haven't heard this. Wait, are you making a joke, or is there like this an actual thing? Let us know. Randolph says Midheaven is in between purgatory and the pearly gates, somewhere between heaven and hell. Probably. Okay. Katie says, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so real quick, we're just going to check out this chart, and I'm going to show you guys on the chart where the Midheaven is. So I have this chart of, we'll just do it to the moment, which, by the way, happy Jupiter entering Gemini day, because today in a few hours Jupiter will be in Gemini. If you have not seen my video on what that means, there's already a video on this. So, and it goes through what it means for each sign. So feel free to watch that after this. And even if you watched it before, watch it again. Watch all my videos. Take the whole weekend. Okay, you could actually do that on my channel. I have so many videos. You could watch them in a weekend. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if you'd get through them. I have so many. But anyways, the point of this little demonstration is this is not a person. This is like if someone was born right now in Vegas, which is where I am. The Midheaven is at 2 degrees Cancer. This means the highest point in the sky right now is 2 degrees Cancer. And this is in whole sign. So you can see that the Midheaven is inside of the 10th house. Sometimes people end up having their Midheaven over here in the 11th or the 9th or even the 12th or the 8th if it's using whole sign. So now we're going to switch it and look at this same chart in Placidus. So you guys can see how it changes. Don't be, intimidated by this. And if you're like, what does it mean, whole sign or Placidus? Try not to get too stuck on that, because it's not as important. Like, it doesn't matter that much to be stuck on that much. It's just one of those things that confuses the hell out of people. Now look, it appears as though the Midheaven just disappeared when we changed it, but it did not disappear. The Midheaven is now the sign on the cusp. This is the cusp of the 10th house, and it's 2 degrees Cancer. So this is what I meant when I said your Midheaven won't change when you're looking, whether you look at whole sign or Placidus. And if your Midheaven changes into a different sign in whole sign, that just means those topics are probably going to factor into the career. It's that simple. There's nothing else beyond that. So now if I'm looking at someone's chart, I'm like, okay, this is their Midheaven at 2 degrees Cancer. I know the moon rules Cancer. So in their chart, I'm going to look, where is the moon? Oh, it's at 3 degrees Capricorn in the 4th house. So that's going to tell me, I'm going to look at this planet. I'm going to look at its relationship to all the other planets. I'm going to look at what sign and what house it's in, and I'm going to be able to tell them about their career. So this is a perfect example of how your Midheaven is not always your job, because the Midheaven in Cancer is about like nurturing, but the moon in Capricorn is not going to show emotion. So preschool teacher is not going to be this person's job, even though preschool teacher would be a Cancer Midheaven type of job. Does that make sense? That you can't tell because you can't tell where the planet is just by what sign is on the midheaven. Okay, so if that was too complicated, still hang out because the rest of this is going to be real easy compared to this. All you need to know to get value out of this video is to know what sign is your midheaven. So we're gonna, I'm gonna get rid of the chart here for a moment. And I'm gonna say hi to more people who are jumping on, and then we're gonna talk more seriously about what this midheaven really is. I'm gonna help you try to understand it a little bit better. And I got this shirt at Goodwill and I'm in love with it. I hope you guys don't mind. It was like so ridiculous that I had to buy it. Okay, so back to the comments here. Randolph, that was a joke. Yes, we got it. Flower Remedy says Midheaven in Libra 11th house at 5 degrees. And what else we got? Sacred Empress. Oh, D-Dub Butterfly says morning. Good morning. And Sacred Empress, Midheaven 7 degrees of Scorpio. Malgarzata says hello, and Snakebite says great shirt. Thank you. All right. So I think we are caught up on the comments. So we're going to get into some basic info about the midheaven, and then we're going to get into what the midheaven means through signs, through the signs. Now, let me see where we're going to start. Number one, we're just going to do some of the basics on what the midheaven is. So, what is the midheaven? The midheaven itself is the point at the top of your chart. What does it mean in astrology? It represents some people with a more modern take on astrology believe the midheaven represents your highest potential in career. People who are more traditional are going to say the midheaven is just a point. And by more traditional, I mean traditional astrology, not viewpoint or political orientation. But with traditional astrology, there is no like rising to your highest potential. There is no like using your chart to your benefit, because it's almost like that wasn't invented yet. You know, it's like, think about it. Back in those days, without the internet, without, you know, all of the modern trappings of life that we have today, if your father was a blacksmith, you were a blacksmith, right? And if you're a woman, you would have to get married. You know, it's like there were all these limitations. And so I think some of the traditional significations maybe reflect this rigidity, because life then, there wasn't as much possible. I think in this day and age, this is why we kind of do need modern astrology too, to bring balance to that, to bring balance to the sometimes fatalistic viewpoint that we see in traditional astrology, although the techniques are freaking good. And this is like the hard part of astrology. I'm just rambling this morning, but the hard part is that we all want to rise to our highest potential, but sometimes the modern stuff isn't as accurate, but it makes you feel good. And then sometimes the traditional stuff is really accurate, but it doesn't make you feel like there's hope. It can actually feel more limiting when someone just says, oh yeah, this planet is poorly placed, so it doesn't, you know, good things aren't going to happen in this area for you. And that's kind of how traditional astrology works. It's like, oh yeah, this planet's messed up. But anyway, let's talk about more about what the midheaven does mean. So in modern astrology, the midheaven represents our career. Each house in the chart represents a different area of life. And the 10th house, which is usually attached to the midheaven, represents our career, our role in life, our public life. It's at the top of the chart. It's the most visible thing. And the most visible thing we do for most people is our job, because people see us in that role. So the midheaven, though, doesn't say this is what your job's going to be, in my opinion. The midheaven kind of shows us our approach to career, number one, how we are going to naturally approach career. So for anyone wondering, my midheaven is in Gemini, And people with Gemini Midheaven will have a lot of jobs when they're younger, usually, because they need to get, wherever we have Gemini, we need experience, and we approach things like a Gemini, which is to kind of go back and forth on things, to wear a bunch of different hats, to have a lot going on, to need to multitask. So when you see that attached to the career, it's like, it looks like job hopping. It looks like doing a lot of different things, or having a job where you do a bunch of different tasks and you wear a bunch of different hats, or having a side hustle. And so we can use the midheaven alone to help us understand that our natural approach to career is just what's meant for us and what's right for us and kind of built into us. But one thing to remember with the midheaven is that it's not our personality. So we don't always relate to our midheaven. Sometimes we relate to our midheaven when it comes to, this is how you will approach career, is midheaven in Gemini, you'll get bored easily. Midheaven in Cancer, you'll want closeness, you'll want to nurture something. Midheaven in Leo, you're going to want to be proud of yourself, and you might want to bring attention to yourself or your work, etc., etc. Midheaven in Capricorn, you want to reach a big goal and make sacrifices. But it doesn't necessarily always mean you're going to do the job that might be associated with that sign, right? So like sometimes you will, but not all midheaven and Cancer people are going to be babysitters, right? Some of them are going to use their ability to nurture in ways that are more, bigger and more business related and more like, it's just not always the same for everyone, because think about it logically. There's more than 12 types of jobs in the world. So it doesn't make sense that every midheaven is just one type of job. So sometimes though, if you understand jobs that represent the planet that rules your midheaven, sometimes you can really relate to them. And I really relate to mine. So I'll tell you guys what mine are. What jobs I've had, they're all Mercury jobs, right? So I have done so much stuff. Grocery store clerk, that is a typical Mercury job, clerk. I've worked as an administrative assistant in a lot of jobs. So like typing and stuff and multitasking and answering phones. Those are all, Gemini type jobs. I taught English for a while. That's a Gemini job, teaching. I worked for a tour company in Arizona, in Sedona, that did metaphysical tours, which was so fun, but I was like the virtual assistant. So that was a very Gemini type job. I've worked in shipping and receiving in a couple different companies, and that is absolutely Gemini, absolutely Mercury ruled. And those are all I can think of at the moment. I worked in a couple law offices. I was a personal assistant. I worked in a couple coffee shops. Didn't really like the coffee shop work. I suck. And one restaurant, but those ones I didn't last as long because I couldn't really do it as well. But in those jobs, I always get put at the front, just talking to people and charging them for their food, which is still falls under like the clerk side of Mercury, is like taking people's money and cashing them out. Okay, so that all being said, where were we? We were on your midheaven is not your job and what it represents. So the midheaven, again, represents 1, your highest potential in career. 2, it represents your natural approach to work. Like you're going to approach your job like and fill in the blank. If you have an Aries midheaven, you might be more confident and more direct and more straightforward and more ambitious when it comes to your career. If you're a Taurus midheaven, you want to approach your career as like, kind of like, what value does this have and what can I get out of it? And how can I do something that has a lot of value or is beautiful or is worth a lot? What are the resources that I have access to if I do this particular career, and how can I command resources or like, deal with the land or et cetera, et cetera. So for each midheaven, you're going to have a natural approach based on the energy of that sign. And you're going to possibly have a lesson of that sign that it's almost like, I like to think of the midheaven as what the world wants from you. So if you guys have ever seen like the Ikagai or heard of the Ikagai, it's like this Japanese Venn diagram that says, let's see if I can pull it up here. Let's just see. Yeah, this is just a kind of a picture of it. I'm going to show you guys. Okay. So did that get weird? Let me see. Okay, no, it didn't. I thought my head was cut off. Okay, so here's the Ikagai, and basically it shows these 4 circles. So the idea is that if you can find what you love, the thing is that what you love plus what you're good at, that's your passion, right? So if you love it and you're good at it, it's a passion. If you love it and the world needs it, it's a mission. But there's no money in these. So we get down to the bottom of what you can be paid for, right? So if you can be paid for it and you're good at it, it's a profession. But notice we don't have the passion or the mission. And if you can be paid for it and the world needs it, it's a vocation. Again, this misses the money. So when you can get all of those 4 things together in one thing, then you have an Ikagai. And that's like your reason for being. I don't think that's the exact translation, but loosely translated, it's this Japanese concept. So the midheaven is this here, what the world needs from you. And when you're doing what the world needs, you might not love it. You're probably going to be okay at it. And this is a crazy thing, okay? If you're doing your midheaven, you can actually be not as good at it, but the world needs this from you. That's what makes it special, is that this is what the world needs from you, is to embody the qualities of the sign on your midheaven. And this is why it is so useful in astrology. And this is why it can be so hard a lot of times for spiritual people to get this. And the reason why it can be so hard to get it is because sometimes we want it to all feel good all the time. Sometimes we don't. It's like we think we should be doing this, what you love part only. And we think we should start from this point. Okay, I love this. Now, I don't think that's a bad place to start. But sometimes you are good at something and you don't love it. Sometimes you are an amazing receptionist and it's not something you feel passionate about. And I think there is a bit of a misconception here in our day and age of the internet, where everyone's talking about how you need to live out your purpose and fulfill your passion. And I'm not saying you guys can't find something you love. Obviously, I'm here talking to you all today. But even this work that I do, I have had to sort of be willing to consider what the world wants from me and do more of that and do less of the what I love and more of what is useful, more of what I'm good at in the eyes of other people. And a lot of that does go back to the sign on my midheaven. You don't get to choose your midheaven. And so here's the thing, we're going to look at the chart and I'm going to tell you guys why this is so sort of not confusing, but why people kind of get it twisted is because I'm going to show you here, just using again this this sample chart. Let me see, can I just change it here? Yes. There we go. So looking at the sample chart, what we see is we have that midheaven up here in Cancer. But where we want to start to really understand the midheaven is we want to look at the IC, The IC is always directly opposite of the MC. So if you know your midheaven, your IC is the sign opposite, and it's the same degree. So this person would have a 2-degree Cancer midheaven, and they would have a 2-degree Capricorn IC. Your IC describes your early life, your home life. It's the point on the bottom of the chart, and it represents, and you might have the moon here, you might not, you might have a bunch of planets here. Either way, your IC still represents what you are comfortable in, what feels like home to you. Now, some people, as you guys probably know, some people have really messed up home lives, and then that messed up stuff feels like home, right? Like, and we can work on that a bit, right? We can work on what feels like home to us to a degree, but whatever sign is on your IC is what feels the most comfortable to you. And this is the thing most people do wrong. They take this feeling, and I did this, they take this feeling of I'm most comfortable in this energy, and they try doing that for their work, and it doesn't work because the world doesn't want that from you. That's your comfort zone. So if someone has a Capricorn IC, their comfort zone is going to be working hard and putting their head down and not caring about their emotions and sacrificing and, coming up with either intense goals or intense labor or intense sacrifice or things that are really serious and dry and not emotional. This doesn't mean that's their personality, remember, because your 4th house isn't your personality. It's like your upbringing. It's your home life from your early life. And it's it can be the town you grew up in, right? Your foundation, your emotional foundation. It's what makes you feel okay. So again, this is what a lot of us do wrong, is that we take what makes us feel okay and try to make that our job. Your job is not there to make you feel okay. It's you're supposed to do it. You know what I mean? Like your job is not like, and I did this wrong for so many years where I would have a job, I would hate it, it wouldn't make me feel the way I wanted to, I would go get another job. And I just kept doing that for a long time because I felt that if I just found the right job, I would feel better. But the idea from the IC to the MC, sometimes this can help us understand why things aren't working in our career. If you are doing a job or trying to do work in a way that really honors your IC and is aligned and is like topics or fields or an approach that's related to your IC, then you may find that it doesn't work. And if that's the case, it would be useful to look at your midheaven and look at what ways is that midheaven a little out of your comfort zone, and try doing those things. Because if you want to rise to your highest potential, it's not going to be like, oh, this is the most comfortable thing. Although you might feel a sense of comfort or fulfillment or happiness when you're doing the right work, when you're doing the work that is right for you, when you're doing the work that is like, okay, this is why I came to Earth to do. But it's just a really great tool to help us identify energetically where we might be stuck in our career. So I'm going to check on the comments and see if anyone says that. Anyone has anything to say about this. Kathy's here. Hello. Flower Remedy says, I don't know what the world needs from me. I wish they would just leave me alone with their neediness. Yeah. Okay. So that might be something else, because the thing is that you might, when you say neediness, you might have a chart where you need more freedom, or to do work where you can detach a bit more. Kathy is saying, okay, so this is a great comment. Been thinking that the midheaven is what the world expects from me. I felt so disconnected from it, not an energy I wanted to embody. And then, but it's interesting because it's an energy I know since I have my South Node conjunct the MC. Yeah, that's an interesting placement as well. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, SB is saying you're going to consider if you're stuck on your IC. So the thing is that when your career isn't working, this is the time to kind of just think about these things. It doesn't mean if you just do your midheaven, you're destined to succeed, but you're more likely, I would say you're more likely to not succeed if you're not doing what your midheaven is. And remember that your midheaven may not be the actual job. It might just be the approach to the job. So one of the examples I like to use here is that you could have a midheaven, you could work in an office, and your midheaven can be in any of the 12 signs, and you can be an office worker. The person with the Aries Midheaven in the office might be the one who like gets everyone started on things, or really, gets people to get back to work, or inspires everyone, or motivates people, or just works by themselves and doesn't need to connect. The Taurus Midheaven person might be the one who has command over the resources, points everyone to the resources they need, or has a soothing influence on people. The Gemini Midheaven office worker might be the chatty one. They might be the one who's asking you a bunch of questions all day. I feel like I just called myself out. They might have a million different jobs. Like they're the one who does all this stuff, but it's all different stuff. And they might have a side job. The Cancer Midheaven might be the one who everyone tells all their feelings to and like cares about everyone and makes everyone feel okay. The Leo Midheaven in the office might be the one who's they might be the one who's getting all the attention. Not always though. They might be the one who is really proud of their work. They might be a manager. They might be someone everyone looks to for some reason, for guidance, or maybe they make everyone laugh, or maybe they are, focused on, sometimes Leo Midheavens focus on attention, but it's not always them. If the Virgo Midheaven in the office is probably the one who's a little more humble, or the one who's gathering information. The Libra Midheaven in the office might be the best dressed, or they might be the one who is trying to bring balance. That can be in an aesthetic way. That can be with looks. That can be the career counselor or the HR person. The Scorpio Midheaven person might be the most intense in the office. They might be the one who does research. They might be more secretive about their work. And, they're going to approach work from the point of let's uncover this. And then the Sagittarius Midheaven in the office, they're the one who has the most vacation time. They're the one who's going to definitely feel like they might inspire people. They might do a big job. They might be out in the field. There's a lot of ways that can show up. The Capricorn Midheaven might be the boss energy, but it could also be the person who follows the rules at the office, the one who's like, no, we're not allowed to do this, or something like that. The Aquarius Midheaven, these people often will work on their own. They don't always work in offices, but they might be like the one who is like the IT person who you call, who comes in, or they might have their own business. Aquarius Midheavens do oftentimes have businesses because they approach their work from a place of how can I make the world better, but it's from the outside, not from being inside of the group. And then the Pisces Midheaven in the office is probably the one who is inspiring, who goes with the flow, who gets lost in things. They might be the more creative one at the office. They might be the less, how do I put it? Not so controlling, more going with the flow type of energy. Okay, so I went through these for people who work in an office so that you guys can see that you don't always, your midheaven is not your job. It's like the role you're going to have in your job. And sometimes, if you combine your midheaven with the planet that rules your midheaven and the sign in the house, it's going to tell you a lot about your career. But it's also, you got to consider your sun sign, your moon sign, your Venus, your Mars, your Mercury. You got to consider the houses in your chart that are lit up. You got to consider the aspects. You got to consider everything in the chart and see, you got to even see, is the ruler of the midheaven in a good place? So for example, in this chart, the moon rules Cancer. The moon is in Capricorn. This is not the best place for the moon. The moon does not like Capricorn. So we might look to Jupiter, because Jupiter is a planet that's exalted in Cancer, and we might see what Jupiter's doing. This person has Jupiter in Taurus in their, is that in their ninth house? Yeah, in their ninth house. No, it's on the cusp. So their eighth or ninth house. So maybe this person would do like psychic work or psychic readings, or caretake people, but in a way that's more like deals with foreigners or the law, or deals with eighth house stuff like death. They might be like a death doula, or they might be like someone who, actually that doesn't feel quite right with the moon here. Maybe it would be more like, I don't know, maybe they work in a morgue or something, or they work with money, they work with taxes or something. Jupiter in Taurus being the planet we're looking at. So you have to look at a lot of things, and I don't want to make this be too confusing. We are going to get into just simply what the midheaven means by sign, but you really do have to look at the whole chart. And that is how that works with everything. Okay, so I'm going to check on the comments again here. Okay, so this is a great example, Sherry. Was it me or was it someone else? Because I feel like your name's familiar. I don't know if you did maybe a short reading with me before. Or just I've seen you a lot on here. But she says, I have my MC in Cancer and IC in Capricorn. I was told by an astrologer friend that I would do very well in healthcare, especially due to my heavy Scorpio placements. I'd rather be a creative. So I don't think Scorpio would want to do healthcare. I think Scorpio would rather be like a therapist, or like sometimes it can though. So I can see why would they make this connection. Scorpio actually rules like dentistry and surgery, because it's like extracting the unseen. But with that Cancer moon, you need to look at what house it's in and what sign it's in. That's going to tell you more than the heavy Scorpio. The heavy Scorpio just means like you might have trust issues. Sometimes, it does sometimes make sense for Scorpio placements to work in healthcare, because sometimes Scorpio work in fields where they have control over people, or where they have to have privacy. So I can see her logic, your friend. But you want to see where's the moon. Okay, so do you think if you do your MC, you can be free to do what you want after? Like, maybe. Like, especially if you are feeling like you don't want to do it. If you feel like, I almost had an existential crisis when I realized my midheaven was in Gemini, and that meant I shouldn't be like necessarily preaching on the internet, or like being a coach, or like sharing my opinions as much, because I loved talking about my opinions. And I remember being like, no, like my life is gonna suck. It's gonna be so shallow and boring. But sometimes you don't know. Sometimes there's a way to connect the midheaven with what you do want. And sometimes there is like, first you give the world what they want, then you get what you want. Sometimes I think that is possible. Although this isn't something I've quite, nailed down in my own life yet. So, but I do think that if it depends. It kind of depends on what your MC is. But there's a way to make it all work somehow. There is a way to make it work in terms of doing, like, fulfilling your role and doing what you want. Okay, so here's another one. Like, a Cancer MC might be a nurse. What if they don't want to be a nurse? Yes. What if you don't like your midheaven? This one is, let's discuss this after we go through the signs, because I feel like I'm not going to get to it if I don't create a cutoff point. So if you are Seven Sky, if you're still here when I get to Pisces, please post this comment again. I don't think you lose in this lifetime if you don't master your midheaven. I think the thing I want everyone to take away from trying to work toward your midheaven is that you'll know if you're doing it right because things will kind of work better. So use this as something to test and measure and figure out what aspect of that midheaven is really the on point thing. So one of the things I tried a lot when I first learned my midheaven was in Gemini was, what did I try doing? Oh, I tried like telling people about what books said because I felt like maybe that was that Gemini energy of like just kind of repeating what other people say, sharing information that wasn't groundbreaking, that's like already written. That didn't really do much. But when I approached that Gemini Midheaven from a standpoint of like getting curious about my audience, engaging with my audience like I am today, instead of just sermoning like a true person with a bunch of planets in Sagittarius would, that's me, instead of just going on a sermon and like going off on you guys about what I believe, I'm listening to you and we're having a conversation. And when I do that, my videos get more views. Now, I'm not saying I have to do that in every video, but when I approach my career from the curiosity of like, how can I best teach you guys? What do you guys want to know? Ask me questions. Let's have an interaction. It goes better because that's more natural. When I'm on a podcast, you guys, I'm like the happiest person I ever have been in my whole life, just talking to someone. It is definitely honoring that midheaven, having a conversation. Okay. Maybe we should talk later about the midheaven and the north node and how they're different. Yes. Okay. Sherry's like, it was my friend. I'm like, that sounds like something I might say. You haven't had readings or you have? Yeah. Yes, you have. Okay. I thought so. I recognize the name. I wouldn't worry too much about Pluto in the same sign for a remedy. I'm just skimming through these. Wow, you guys are chit-chatty today. I love it. Okay, yeah. This is exactly what SB is saying, yes. Looking at the energy of what the sign brings to the midheaven is more important than the exact job. Yeah. And I think that sometimes you will do the exact job, and that's fine too. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the Aries Midheaven. I think I will take the chart off for this. And do this. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with the midheaven in Aries. Remember, your midheaven is not your job. Also, one more little point actually before we get into that, and that is that the midheaven isn't the sign of fame. Okay, the point of fame. People will say that. Let me know in a comment if you've heard this before, that like your midheaven is the point of fame in your chart, your 10th house is the point of fame. Well, this cannot be true based on logic because not everyone is famous. So therefore, that is wrong. It is what you are most likely to be known for. Now, how wide that reach of who knows you is, that's going to depend. But you might be known on your block for something. You might be known in your hometown for something. You might be known at your job for being exactly like I went through all the midheavens for all the office workers. You might be the office worker who wears cute clothes. You might be the office worker who has style. You might be the office worker who is funny. You might be the office worker who gets everyone moving or intimidates people, right? So regardless of how big your sphere of influence is, the midheaven is going to tell you what you can be known for in that sphere of influence, and we all have a different level. Yes. So since we're talking about being famous, Cherry is asking, is it Sherry? I think I asked you this before. or Cherie, shoot. Can you be well known or famous if you have 0 fame placements? My entire chart is bottom heavy. So what it means if your chart is bottom heavy, Sherry, thank you, is that you're not going to be, okay. I learned this from Rick Levine, and I'm so glad because I remember thinking that my chart is also bottom heavy. And I remember thinking that meant that I was an introvert. And the thing is that it doesn't mean that. It's like, it's almost like the bottom of your chart. If you imagine your chart is like made of glass, and the bottom is the glass that is tinted and you can't see through, and the top is the glass that is glass. Think of it like this. The planets above the horizon, the AC, ascendant, descendant axis, those planets are visible. Everyone will see those things about you. The things on the bottom of your chart, people won't see about you unless you go out of your way to show them. This helped me a lot to learn because people won't know you. If you have a bottom heavy chart, people won't know who you really are. It has nothing to do with how famous you can be. Now, sometimes we see famous people with top heavy charts because those planets are more visible, and having more visible planets sometimes does translate into having a more visible career. But I think Katy Perry and Britney Spears are 2 examples of people who have a lot more planets on the bottom, who are both famous. So you can look at their charts if you want to. All right. Okay, we're going to go to the Aries Midheaven now. So for the Midheaven in Aries, it's like you're here to lead, initiate, or defend. Sometimes you will be the first to do something. Sometimes you're going to write books people haven't heard of. Sometimes you will add something new to your field, or you will start something, or, the part of the Aries that can show up in work sometimes is that you might work better independently when you have an Aries Midheaven, because Aries wants to go when it's ready and when it has energy, and it burns out fast. So sometimes in your work life, you can have that like burst of energy followed by a crash. And then it's like, it's not wrong. It's just what your midheaven is. So sometimes people with Aries Midheaven, especially if they have like Mercury, Mars together, will work in fields like tech or startup or like coding or engineering, because Mars actually is mechanical. It rules like anything mechanical. So like that can be how any kind of machine works, and that machine might be lawnmowers, it can be computers, it can be the server or the mainframe. And forgive me if I'm using outdated words. I'm a product of the 90s, and I don't know shit about technology. But like you can do like defending software, you could help companies to defend their computers. Or sometimes the Aries Midheaven people will do things using their body, or do things that represent passion or intensity, or they deal with actual heat or actual fighting. Not always, but like sometimes there are people out there who blow glass and they work with heat, right? There's bakers, there's people who work in kitchens. Cooks sometimes can have Aries, because especially if they do really nice cutting, like work with knives, because Aries rules sharp objects. Now that wouldn't be my first example of an Aries Midheaven, but those are some of the kinds of jobs we can see. But sometimes the Aries Midheaven person will, again, like some in a role where they get people to do things. So sometimes the Aries Midheaven is, what was I just going to say? Like CEOs, or like, sometimes it's CEOs, sometimes it's managers. Leo Midheaven is another one that can be managers, but like, because they're that Martian energy of provoking, right? Aries is the masculine sign that's ruled by Mars, so it's like provoking, and it's like defending. So sometimes it's like taking the initiative and getting other people to do stuff and delegating. You know, cardinal signs sometimes do rule delegating. Okay. You have to stop trying to help me. That annoys the hell out of me, you guys. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so other things the Aries Midheaven can do is be a trailblazer in their field, be the leader of a team, work in a competitive, high energy environment. So yeah, sometimes we're going to see the very literal manifestation of like firefighter or fighter, you know, someone who fights and they boxer or something, or like race car driver. But so things that are like risky and daredevil energy. But sometimes it's not. And my favorite example of this midheaven, of someone famous who does not do Aries type stuff, is Stephen King. Stephen King is a writer. But what makes this, I mean, what we see in his chart that makes this make sense is that Mars is in the 12th house, and the 12th house usually represents people who prefer working behind the scenes. But the Aries theme in Stephen King's work, I think, shows up in the themes of murder in his stories. And like, I don't think I've read any of his books, but I have watched a few of the movies, and they all have like, they're all kind of creepy and weird, right? Like they're not just different. They're like creepy. Which, you know, that's probably some of that 12th house energy too. But this is a great example that like not every Aries Midheaven is going to be a firefighter. So don't take it that literally. And the worst thing you can do with astrology, with your midheaven, is to decide not to do something you wanted to do because it wasn't firefighting. You have an Aries Midheaven. Don't do that. Just use the chart to confirm what you already know and keep what you already know to be true. And then after that, see how your midheaven factors in and see how trying to apply the sign of your midheaven in your approach might make it better. And test that and measure it and literally do it in your life and see what works. Okay, we're going to move on now to the Taurus Midheaven. For the Taurus Midheaven, the approach to career is all about stability, security, and sensuality. Taurus is the feminine sign that Venus rules, so it's about receiving and it's about resources, right? Because it's an earth sign as well. So you approach your career from the standpoint of how are you going to make the most money? What can you build? What can you cultivate? How can you enjoy the material world? Sometimes Taurus Midheaven people will work somewhere where they know they're going to get like certain perks that make it more comfortable. Now, sometimes though, they're going to work in really more heavy labor type fields, type jobs. So one Taurus Midheaven could be someone who works as like a stockbroker or works with, you know, trading or the markets or commanding resources, controlling resources. So that's like food. Anything with food can be Taurus. Anything with the land. You can be a farmer. You can raise cattle. You can build or cultivate something. You can build buildings. You could buy and sell buildings. You could be a massage therapist working with the senses. So working with the senses, that can be your voice. That can be all of the senses, right? Beauty, art, the finer things in life. It can be things that put people at ease, right? Like a good song or a good dinner or a good view, you know, like a nice view. Or let me think, smell. Oh yeah, essential oils or perfumes, you know, that could be a Taurus Midheaven type job. Touch would be like the massage therapist or things that like physically put people more at ease, things that feel nice. Again, resources, fabrics or foods or products, anything that you can buy and sell, not like Not from the standpoint of shipping and receiving, but from the standpoint of comfort, independence, and wealth, including controlling resources, being a resource for other people. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I see for Taurus Midheaven. So the fixed part of the Taurus is going to give stability. You're going to approach your career from what's the most stable. What can I depend on the most? Taurus Midheaven people are not as likely to have high risk careers unless they've worked their way up to it. Like, they might over time deal with things that are more risky investments, but not until after they've created a certain amount of stability from it, for example. Okay, so let's see. Yes, again, any kind of resources, anything dealing with the material world. So this can be like actual building buildings, or accumulating resources, farming, dealing with plants or animals or gardening or the environment, working outside. You can have careers that have a more comfortable lifestyle, and that might be the focus when you're looking at what to do, is that's going to factor in. This is not going to be, Taurus Midheaven is probably not going to be, it's possible they could be a social worker, but it's not as likely. They're more likely to do things that either feel good or give you money, and let other people feel good or give you money. Those are like the top three. Like, if I had to put it into three categories, either it makes you feel good, it makes other people feel good, or you make money doing it, or all three. Or even like money, sometimes fields where you can learn the ins and outs of money and gathering wealth, from the standpoint of gathering wealth and creating that stability. Also property management stuff is all going to be Taurus type stuff. So the Taurus Midheaven, it's like another keyword for the Taurus Midheaven is going to be value. Okay, values. What are your values? How do you live by your values? How do you help other people live by their values? And what is worth, what things are worth? Sometimes it's seeing value, having an eye for beauty, or an eye for nice things, or expensive things as well. I want to say like appraisers might go under Taurus as well for that reason. Okay, so Gemini, going on now to Gemini Midheaven. We've talked about this a little bit. Gemini Midheavens are going to communicate. They're going to be versatile. They're going to be curious. They're going to always want to learn more usually, and they want to be in a field where they're either going to learn or they won't get bored. They're going to be happier if they have more than one hat or more than one job. Sometimes the Gemini Midheaven can be one who spreads ideas, who writes or speaks or teaches or, starts conversations. They really are going to feel like they thrive in intellectually stimulating environments. Gemini Midheaven will also do well in positions, usually that are changing every day, that aren't always exactly the same, where you never know what's going to happen. There's a bit of a push and pull, or it's not exactly the same every day. Maybe it's the same thing, but every day doing it is a little bit different. They're going to really thrive where adaptability is needed. So that's one of the benefits about this midheaven, is like the adaptability. Sometimes you can network or like engage with other people's ideas, or chit chat, or enjoy chit chatting. Gemini Midheaven is probably not as happy in a field that's more isolated, where they don't get to run things by people or talk to people about stuff. So if you have a Gemini Midheaven and you're doing like intense research, or you're like overloaded with paperwork, you're probably going to be happiest if you can talk to people. And let me think. Yeah, so oftentimes, again, Gemini Midheavens, they're going to have a lot of different jobs when they're younger, because of that desire to have discourse and have like an exchange. There's like this exchange of ideas, and exchange of, you just need to like be busy. Also, Gemini rules the hands. So sometimes Gemini Midheaven will work with their hands. They'll play an instrument. They'll be singers. They'll be songwriters. They'll Sometimes Gemini is speakers or podcasters and stuff, but the hands also were like typing and like working with computers, doing things with your hands, especially things that keep you busy with your hands. Again, yeah, like instruments or things that require dexterity. And what else? Gemini also rules shipping and receiving, skilled work. And, Mercury of all the gods is the one that gives something to all the other gods and gets a gift back from each god. So what that means in career because of this is like, it's like you can do anything, right? You can do anything, and you can almost talk a dog off a meat wagon. You might be able to sell, I do see Gemini Midheaven in the charts of people who own businesses sometimes. Sometimes this is a midheaven of a salesperson because Mercury rules sales. That also rules money. It rules coinage. So sometimes Gemini midheavens will deal with money or finances. Again, like the markets. Sometimes they will deal with astrology or they will deal with the occult in their work. Not always at all, but sometimes. So that's what I have for the Gemini Midheaven. We're going to go on to the Cancer Midheaven now. And, I forgot a couple things for the Gemini Midheaven, and that is some other jobs that I've seen Gemini Midheaven people do: journalism, public relations, teaching, broadcasting, any kind of sales, right? So again, that's like the clerk, the person who takes the money at the register, people who deal with coinage or mint or, like banking or money or interest. The person answering the phone when you call somewhere to buy something. Also, tour guides go under Mercury. So, and public speaking is another one. I don't know if I said that, but that's another one. So now on to Cancer. Before we go on to Cancer Midheaven, I did want to announce that my readings are now open for June. So if you want to book a consultation with me, I was very limited in my availability last month, but this month there's a little bit more and I have just opened it up. So if you want to book with me, you can. And there is a link in the description to do that. Going on now to our Cancer Midheavens. Cancer Midheavens are here to nourish, protect, and provide. Now, protect, you might not think that, but the crab is protective. Cancer people are protective. So when you have a Cancer Midheaven, it's almost like you create a safe space for people. Now, this doesn't always have to be Mother Teresa. I think Cancer Midheaven is slightly misunderstood because it is seen as being, I don't know, like preschool teacher energy, right? The Cancer archetype of the mother and everything. But the thing is, lots of guys have Cancer Midheavens and they're going to be like, you could be a badass dude and still have a Cancer Midheaven and still make all the other badass dudes feel better. You could be like everyone's buddy. You can be the bartender that knows everybody's name, like Cheers. That's how old I am. You could be someone who, I keep thinking of like biker as someone who like could have a Cancer Midheaven, right? You could own like a bike shop. Shopkeeper is a Cancer field because you make people feel like they're coming home when they show up there. There's a sense of belonging and a sense of like, this is a space that is protected. Cancer Midheaven people can also do things that involve nurturing. That's not always babysitting. It can be. But you can nurture a baby, you can nurture a child, you can nurture a group of people in a coaching program, you can nurture a bunch of plants. But the Cancer Midheaven can nurture each individual plant or each individual seed or each individual person in the program that they're running, right? So it's like creating a sense of security, creating a sense of safeness for people and emotional connections and the family or the family-like dynamics are going to be nurtured. So we all need these people. We all need these people to kind of foster growth in others and make them feel taken care of. Now, sometimes the Cancer Midheaven person does a job that is caretaking, and they have a caretaking job, and they are a nanny or a preschool teacher or a nurse or something else that is going to be directly related, and other times they're not. Other times, depending on where that moon is, they can do something totally different. Now, some other fields that Cancer can be involved with that aren't always just about nurturing is like home and family. Home. So sometimes Cancer can be associated with real estate as Taurus can be as well. But for Cancer, there sometimes really is a strong ability to like protect the home or do fields or work that, again, like your home is your safe space, right? So when someone sells you a house, they're selling you a safe space. So Cancer Midheaven could sell houses. They can have empathy. They can have careers that have a lot of security and stability like that as well. But sometimes the Cancer is going to want to provide, the Cancer Midheaven is going to want to provide emotional support and guidance, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they feel burned out by it. So if you're a Cancer Midheaven and you're like, I don't want to be a nurse, like someone said earlier, you don't have to be a nurse. Or you may find that you have that job, but it's draining to you or something. That does not mean you have to keep it just because this is your Midheaven. Okay, so before Cancer Midheaven, if we're looking at the modern way of looking at this, it's going to be that Capricorn I see, you want to sacrifice, right? You want to not show your emotions. But moving up to that Cancer Midheaven is about coming to a place where you can be more vulnerable or you can nurture something. Now, sometimes what you're nurturing is like a book that you're writing. It doesn't always have to be a person or something that has feelings, okay? So that's another way of doing it. Okay, here's another, we talked about this earlier, Lavender Moon. Here's another Cancer Midheaven and who was told they should be a preschool teacher. Now it looks like this, I don't know if this was like, it made you happy to hear this or not, because I see that little emoji. But you really enjoy helping people through things. This is a perfect example of what we said earlier. Thank you, Lavender Moon, for sharing that. So let's go on now to our next Midheaven in the list, which is going to be Leo. Now, this one I think gets misunderstood because people think Leo Midheaven and they think fame. They think someone who's the center of attention, a celebrity. Now, that is one possibility, but Leo isn't just being famous, right? You can get attention for things that aren't just fame. For example, the manager at the job is always surrounded by people. Have you ever had a job where there's a manager and everyone is always asking them for something and all day they are just answering questions to different people because they're like the central figure of the organization? They might not be the boss usually. They're like one level lower than the boss, and they're like the one who's like, everyone needs them, everyone wants their attention. They have to try to get away from people because people just ask them stuff they could ask someone else. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? This is like an example of a Leo Midheaven because they're the center of the thing happening and they are like gathered around. Now, there's other ways the Leo Midheaven can show up that does not involve any attention at all. Because, and my favorite example of this is if you have a Leo Midheaven, but your sun is in the 12th house, you are probably not going to want attention. You are probably going to want to work in isolation. And maybe what you're doing, that gets attention. What you're working on is the thing that will get attention. So like an artist, for example, who they're going to feature their art and they do not want to be in the limelight at all. So if you have a Leo Midheaven and you don't want to be in the limelight, do not force yourself to be in the limelight. So, but there might be a factor of shining or inspiring or leading that comes in your work. There might be a factor of lifting people up and having that uplifting kind of sunny effect on people, like the sun, of like bringing warmth and positivity and reminding people that the sun will come out again, and having that sort of almost like cheerleader role for people. Helping them see what's possible really would be kind of a sun ruled thing to do in your work. But it can also be something more like sometimes it's going to be taking the stage, captivating an audience, leaving an impression. Sometimes it's going to be prioritizing self-expression. Sometimes you do something creative. Sometimes you get recognition, but sometimes you just do something you're proud of. So Leo Midheaven can also be someone who is in a marching band or something, or a police officer, because there's a need to feel like to show up in your job and be seen a certain way and be proud of what you do and like step into this pride, you know? So like cops, they kind of need that like pride, and like Leo Midheaven, sometimes you're going to see them in uniform, a job that has a uniform, because it's like that desire to be recognized can show up like that. Not like I'm so important, look at me, but there's a little bit of a need to feel important or to feel proud of yourself. That's what the Leo Midheaven needs, is you need to feel proud of your work, and you're going to approach your work in terms of like, what could I do that I would be proud of? You know, what would make me feel the most proud? And they'll just naturally kind of want to do that thing. Okay, so let me see what else we have. Leadership is another thing for the Leo Midheaven. I think I touched on that. And confidence, you know, careers where you get to be confident and have charisma. This can be like a TV personality, but it can also just be the person at the job who has the charisma, right? Like the person at any job that is like the one who everyone wants to say hi to first, kind of a thing. The popular one. Leo Midheaven is the popular one. Okay, let me see what else. Yeah, those are the big things. So let's, and I think the Leo Midheaven does need to feel like their talents are able to be expressed. Their self-expression is able to be shown in some level in their work. That might not be in the work itself. It might be in their interaction with the coworkers on the job. But either way, it's like they need to be able to make jokes or be the funny one or do something else where they're really expressing themselves. Okay. Let's see. What's next, Virgo? So for Virgo Midheaven, it's about serving, analyzing, and improving. And, we think of that Mercury-ruled Midheaven, but Virgo is feminine and it's earth. So it's going to be much more practical than Gemini, and it's going to be much more receptive. So what does the world want from you with the Virgo Midheaven? They want you to be humble. They want you to be humble. And if you are not humble, they will punish you. If you're not honoring that sign of your Midheaven, they will either punish you by it won't work out, or it'll just be harder. Now, I don't think that means you have to be a servant, especially if you don't want to with a Virgo Midheaven. It does not mean you can't be famous with a Virgo Midheaven if you don't want to. I mean, if you want to, but you might be more recognized when you're doing something like making a spreadsheet, or where you're doing roles that involve either attention to detail, problem solving, or service to others, being practical, efficient, or organized. But Virgo Midheaven can also deal with nutrition and health. So sometimes it's more like nutrition and you become a nutritionist or usually Virgo is going to be more of the natural health, but it can be anything, right? It can be any job in healthcare. So it could be acupuncturist, or it could be nutritionist, or it can be like chiropractor, anything that's like, I want to say not mainstream, but that's not the right word. Anything that's about the Virgo energy of healing and bringing wellness and wholeness to people. So sometimes it's going to be just the analysis side, and you're analyzing things and you're recognizing patterns or doing data analysis or working with science or engineering or finance or something like that, where you're improving processes. Maybe you could work in quality control. Maybe you literally use a spreadsheet and you gather information or do market research. But it can also be like healthcare, counseling, or being administrative, where it's like you're making a real difference to people. And that sometimes Virgo Midheaven needs to feel like they're making a difference. Okay, so then what else for Virgo Midheaven? Virgo Midheaven. There's also, like anything you can perfect, okay? So like an actor with a Virgo Midheaven is going to study people and like notice how they do it. And then like, I know a lot of actors do this, but this is an example of your approach to your career is you're going to analyze things, and then you might repeat it, or you might analyze things and then take that data. And with Virgo, it's not just about gathering things, right? It's gathering things and then separating the wheat from the chaff, separating the thing that is useful from the thing that is not useful, and whittling it down to only the useful parts. So not just like having a spreadsheet, but cleaning up a spreadsheet. Not just like noticing trends in the market, but taking out the part of the trends that you don't need and only providing what's left, like what's useful, like whittling something down to what is good and wholesome and useful. There is also, control is associated with Virgo. So sometimes you're going to do things that are administrative or deal with rules or deal with, like I think of a Virgo job as like someone at the DMV who's like, yes, you get your license. No, you don't, right? Where it's like, it's being receptive to the rules, but it's not creating them. Again, it doesn't always tell you like exactly what your job is going to be, but that the type of work you're going to do is either receptive to information, gathering data, having some kind of control, or helping people with being of service or health or something. All right, so now on to the Libra Midheaven. This Midheaven is a people person Midheaven. That is the thing, because Libra is an air sign, but it's a second air sign, so it's about communication with other people. Whereas Gemini is more about communication for your own self in a way. Like you're bouncing your own ideas off of people. Libra communication is almost like communication that is more other centered, right? So and I'm not saying Gemini can't be people centered, but it's like the Gemini Midheaven is like, I want the information. So I'm going to ask you a question so I can get the information. Whereas the Libra Midheaven is, I'm going to ask you a question so I can get to know you and understand you and understand your values. So it's more personal. And so it's the most personal Midheaven that deals with information. So sometimes Libra Midheavens will do art. They will do things that bring that aesthetically pleasing stuff to the world and make everything balanced and even and beautiful. Sometimes they will mediate and do things like being a judge or do things that bring balance. Now, sometimes they will bring balance by being more of a pain in the ass. They'll bring balance by saying the thing no one else wants to say. They'll bring balance by causing, the thing is, they can cause harmony or they can cause disharmony. If a Libra Midheaven thinks things are not balanced, they can cause the disharmony to bring what they think balance is. So they can be kind of argumentative, or they can tell you the other side of the story, right? So this would be like, what I'm thinking of is like the prosecuting attorney, like the one who is like the pain in the ass, who's like giving the sort of against the defendant, but they're bringing the other side of it. Diplomacy is a keyword for Libra Midheaven, so things like that require social graces sometimes. Sometimes things that require cooperation or balance. So like networking and being people, negotiating, being diplomatic, working with the law, building relationships. So this is a great one for networking. Sometimes it's good for like charm and like working your way up the ladder of success, right? Because it's like, I'll give you this, so you give me that. Relationship building is usually quite natural for this one. Sometimes it's aesthetic, sometimes it's collaboration. An example of like a Libra Midheaven career might be something like a career counselor, where, you know, someone doesn't, it's like you're one-on-one with someone, you're helping them bring balance to their life, and you're providing them with information that's going to help their life be in more harmony, because you're helping them harmonize with something they already want to do. Like, to be a good career counselor, you can't just be like, oh, here's a good field that's going to make a lot of money, right? You have to kind of consider, what is the person good at? What could they do? What are their talents? You have to be willing to kind of bend to what the person needs. And so I think of the Libra Midheaven is able to do that as well. Yeah. And bringing harmony with that Libra Midheaven can show up in many different ways. It doesn't just have to be in aesthetic or design, although sometimes you're going to see Libra Midheavens who are artists, who do graphic design, who do fashion or interior decorating or feng shui or something like that. But the keyword balance can really bring balance in any area of life. So someone in the chat's talking about being a massage therapist. That would bring balance, right? It brings balance to the person who has sore muscles. You know, and it's like you're applying pressure to an area to create a release and there's an imbalance, so you got to move something so it's balanced, right? It's the scale. Libra's the scale. Okay. Going on now. Let's go on. Also, fairness is another key word for Libra. Sometimes, you know, a judge is kind of a Libra career, because you have to be fair and kind of impartial. And so that's where that air sign kind of gets some benefits of not being too emotional, which allows that fairness to take place as well. Okay, going on now to our next sign, which are Scorpio Midheavens. For Scorpio Midheaven, this one is more intense. It does sometimes deal with transformation. Sometimes that is investigating and doing research. Sometimes it's empowering people, right? Because of the power that's associated with Scorpio. But remember, in traditional astrology, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So it still has that sort of penetrating or provocative energy, but it's below the surface instead of above the surface. So instead of fighting like Mars Midheaven, it's going to be war strategy. You know, it's like the one you don't see coming, the one hiding in the alley, the one who you didn't expect to be creating some kind of a defense, right? So Scorpio Midheaven can still deal with defense. It can still deal with protection, but it's more in an invisible way. There's other things Scorpio Midheaven can represent, like, I would say like surgeons, dentists. Dentistry and surgery are ruled by Scorpio. And we can also see, like, I talked about this earlier, fields that either require confidentiality, where you're dealing with secrets. That could be anything dealing with secrets, like having a secret recipe that you're not allowed to share, dealing with proprietary information, dealing with big business where you have to sign an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement, in order to do that kind of work. And that can be lots of stuff that does that, right? Like new products, new technologies will do that. They will make sure you can't tell people what they're making, or recipes. They don't want their hidden recipe. Or, you know, sometimes even with like medical stuff, like with the medical field, it's different rules, but it's the same idea. Like, you can't just talk about what you do in the same way. Or the law is like that, medical is like that, and some types of counseling and stuff are like that as well. where breaking confidentiality is like legal and it's punishable. Now, you can also work with transformation. So I literally know someone with a Scorpio Midheaven who I did a lot of sessions with, who did like not theta healing. It's a different type, but I just loved that she had that Midheaven, because you really can get to the bottom of something with a Scorpio Midheaven in your work. So you might get to the root cause of an illness. That can be through doing some kind of healing work. Scorpio Midheaven can be a very healing Midheaven because you can get to the bottom of something. But it can also be like a counselor, a therapist, or a psychologist will help you get to the root cause of your internal psychological stuff. Or like internal medicine, where they're taking out the root cause of the illness and they're pulling it out of the body and they're removing it. Or, other things where you can work underground or deal with things that come from underground, like mining or oil or other resources that come from underground. Or like plumbing. Plumbing is ruled by Scorpio because it's underneath your house, it's underneath the ground, it's not seen. And so things that are not seen like that, things that are unseen, the person behind the scenes that has the power, who nobody knows who they are, dealing with that person. That can also be a Scorpio Midheaven kind of thing. So it's like delving into the mysteries of life. Sometimes I think Scorpio Midheavens can be good at social media because sometimes they're good at knowing what is going to influence someone, what's going to be, like they know how to make power plays or exactly what to do or say to like hook people, if that makes sense. Sometimes there is that deep empathy, though, that comes with that Scorpio Midheaven. And there's an amount of focus that Scorpio has to like zero in on a target and never let go, fixed water. So sometimes that can be, most extreme scenario might be like, what are they called? Like a hitman or something? Or like, like a hitman or like a sniper or something. But that metaphor could be in your work in a more metaphorical way, where you're the one who eliminates the competition in a company and takes out the competition, or eliminates identifies the competition's weaknesses or something like that. So those are all possible Scorpio things. Don't think though, because the way we talk about Scorpio, don't think that this is like a bad sign or a bad place to have planets or a bad midheaven. It just means that you're going to work with things that are unseen probably and are deep and mysterious. But that would be what is right for you. So, and sometimes it's something really basic that Scorpio rules. Like, I can't think of anything. I was going to say bugs, but I guess that could go under this one, right? Like a exterminator, right? Because it's like you have power, anything where you have power over something. So that has power over the insects. And they get into like the crooks and crannies of the house and stuff. Okay, moving on. Moving on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius Midheaven is going to approach your career from a standpoint of freedom and expansion. So wherever you have Sagittarius in your chart is where you're always going to want more. You're never going to be satisfied. You're always going to want to grow. And like Sagittarius, that arrow is pointing toward the future. So it means you want a job that is forward focused, or you are focused on what's next. You're focused on how the job allows you to grow. You're going to consider your ability to grow when you are applying for jobs, when you're thinking about doing one, because that ability to grow is like everything for that Sagittarius energy. It's like, it's so important. Sometimes Sagittarius Midheavens will do things that are more literal connected to Sagittarius, like flight attendant or pilot, or someone who works with foreigners or teaching, or like professor at a university or something like that, but not always, because it depends on where Jupiter is in the chart. But Sagittarius Midheaven is always going to approach your work from the standpoint of how can you expand or how can you explore? What would be the most fun? You know, it's like this expansive vision and the pursuit of growth are going to be really important. So sometimes Sagittarius Midheavens will also inspire. So you are going to see teachers, preachers, priests, you know, religious people, people who have some kind of important message to share or who have a belief system that they share with the world. Sometimes you'll see people who are debating on TV with Sagittarius Midheavens because it's like, you could do things where you are like your opinion is being shared. And people, it's the thing is people are going to want that from you more. People are going to want, if you have a Sagittarius Midheaven, you might want, because of that IC being in Gemini, you might want to stick with the facts. You might not want to share your intuition or your truth in your career, but that might be exactly what people want from you. If that makes sense, because that Gemini IC is more comfortable being able to just repeat what someone else said. And the world will reward you when you are sharing your intuition, when you are diving into it. And this is another example from my own life here. Mine are opposite, right? So I have Sagittarius IC, Gemini Midheaven. And when I was doing tarot, even though I was quite good at it, I was very good at it. The world didn't really want that from me. The world, I didn't get recognized for it. I didn't make very much money doing it. I've made so much more money doing, I don't want to say it like that, but it's very clear from the feedback that the universe has given me that even though I was amazing at reading tarot, you guys. I would tell people things that were so true and so right. But it's like the world just didn't necessarily want that from me because that's my IC, not my Midheaven. Okay, so for you, Sagittarius Midheaven, it's opposite. Where what you don't want to do, again, is revert to the facts or hide behind the facts or try to find some research to back something up or try to find out what someone else thinks before you share your opinion. You're going to be more recognized or more accepted in your public role when you are championing a cause, when you have a greater vision, when you're connected to some kind of religious or spiritual belief system, when you are sharing your beliefs, when you are, talking about why things are the way they are, when you're talking about philosophy or doing some long-term education. Jupiter and Sagittarius also rule like higher education, even if it's in a technical field. So like being an expert at something or being a very going to years of study of something, because it gets into like the deeper topics of that issue or of that field. Like the highest level college classes on a thing is going to be Sagittarius, because you kind of have to learn more than just that thing to be that good, to be that much of an expert. I would say being an expert is ruled by Sagittarius. There's also other things Sagittarius rules, like horses. Horses is the one thing I think of, horses and planes. So you could do any work that deals with those two things. Usually, what else? Let me think about. That's all I'm really connecting with at the moment. Let me see if there's anything I missed. Oh, also adventure. I didn't talk enough about this. Jobs where you have to travel or explore or go from place to place. Work where you have freedom. Those are all going to be, you might, as a Sagittarius Midheaven, you might think, how free can I be in this work? And the one that gets the most points wins. That might be one of the things you consider when you're applying for a job or trying to decide is what lets me do the most or have the most experience or have the most fun or have the most adventures. Now you could still have more of a regular job with a Sagittarius Midheaven, but it's people at work are going to appreciate you more if you're talking about something you believe or you are teaching something or you're being inspired. Being inspired is another thing here. So going on now to the next Midheaven, which is Capricorn. So for Capricorn Midheaven, I think the stereotype here is boss energy. Not everyone with a Capricorn Midheaven is going to be a boss. Not everyone with a Capricorn Midheaven wants to be a boss. Sometimes they're going to be a stay-at-home parent or something. But the key word here that I would give for someone who is like, why is this? I would say the key word for Capricorn Midheaven is sacrifice. And you might approach your work from the standpoint of what job or what role would allow me to have the most integrity, because integrity is a Capricorn thing. You might find that what job or what role is worth sacrificing for. That may be another question you're asking if you have a Capricorn Midheaven. And some Capricorn Midheavens are going to become an authority in their field, and that's their prerogative. That's what they want to be doing. They want to position themselves to be an authority. But really, when I think of Capricorn, I think about getting to the top of the mountain and the sacrifices that you make along the way and how good it feels when you reach it. So because of this, Capricorn Midheaven is going to be about ambition and discipline and authority and leadership. And Capricorn is the feminine sign that Saturn rules. So it's about being able to work within a corporate structure, or to work within a limiting structure, or to do work that involves limits or consequences, or even the topic of death for Capricorn, because Saturn rules death, Saturn rules time. So people with Capricorn Midheavens can work in fields where time is of the essence, or where you're dealing with people who are older in your work, or there's a high level of discipline and organization needed, or you're looking at long-term plans and long-term goals, or like you want to leave a legacy, because you want to build something of value and have something to leave behind you. So you might climb the ladder of success or be recognized as a leader, but you may also not do that. You might just want to be the absolute best at whatever you're doing. You might want to be the best stay-at-home mom you can be. You might want to be the best cashier you can be. But it's about treating your work like it's something to accomplish. That's a Capricorn Midheaven thing. So we're going to go on now to our next one, which is going to be Aquarius. Aquarius Midheavens, when I was doing some research the other day, these ones, a lot of the ones I saw had their own business. They were CEOs. Not everyone with an Aquarius Midheaven has to be a CEO, but you're going to approach your work and your career from the standpoint of what is going to allow me to be the most free, what is going to allow me to help the most people. And it's usually not going to be the same thing everyone else is doing. Usually you're going to have some innovation. Usually you're going to do something a little different than what everyone else is doing. Usually you don't want to be confined inside of a group. You would rather be an outcast who is a coder, who works remotely, who doesn't have to fit into any particular societal role. Or you could, with an Aquarius Midheaven, you could work remotely for an organization and let me think, you can do work in a way that is somehow detached. Do work that is for the good of the people, but you don't have to be with them when you're doing it. So science and technology are these kind of things where you want to help the world and you want to make the world a better place, but you're not doing it by feeding the homeless. You're not doing it by babysitting, right? There's a need usually for Aquarius Midheaven to go do your own thing and beat your own drum and be your weird ass self in career and not really care what other people think. The world is going to reward you more if you're innovative, if you are revolutionizing something, if you're making the world a better place, if you're inspiring change, if you're sharing ideas, if you are challenging the status quo, or you're working towards some kind of progress. Now, Aquarius is ruled in modern astrology by Uranus. And Uranus is the sky god who was traumatized and then flew away to the sky. So there is a representation of Uranus with Aquarius Midheaven and now not everyone with Aquarius Midheaven is I'm going to leave my career because it hurt me. But there might be some themes of that midheaven that involve this need to detach a little bit. Flower Remedy is saying, notice a lot of people with Aquarius Midheaven work for the government. That is definitely a possibility because it's Saturn ruled, right? And Saturn rules the government. So that is very on point. But it's almost like it's likely they would do it in a different kind of a way or a weird kind of a way, or, like the remote IT person who works for the government, or like something like that. But a lot of this depends on other things in the chart. But we do see a lot of Aquarius is interesting because we think of Aquarius as freedom, but it's ruled by Saturn, and how does that make sense in traditional astrology, right? How can a sign ruled by the planet that constricts and limits be so interested in freedom? And that is because it is the masculine sign that Saturn rules. So usually there's a desire for Aquarius people in general to almost like create a new structure, to say no to the current status quo and want to somehow make it different or make it better. And sometimes there is the signification of like, how do I put it? It's like not being in the limits, working in the limits, but not being in them. So you can see how sometimes an Aquarius Midheaven might work in a field where they get some kind of benefits that make them feel almost like I don't have these same limitations, if that makes sense. So it just depends. It really depends on a lot of things, because remember, your midheaven is not your personality. So someone could have a million Cancer placements and then their midheaven is Aquarius, and that would change it totally, right? It's not like you are your midheaven. Okay, so I thought of a meme that represents this, and that might be like, I'm gonna get this wrong, but this was someone who like joined a business that has like tech support online just so they could change a feature that they didn't like. That's like my funny example of Aquarius Midheaven is like joining a business so they can do something that's going to make it better and then quitting. Now, not all of them are going to do that. Now, sometimes you're going to see, though, Aquarius Midheavens also working with technology as well. That's another possibility, too. So we're going to go on to our last but not least midheaven, which is Pisces. For Pisces Midheaven, you are here to empathize, inspire, and heal. It's all about connecting to people on this deep emotional level, tapping into intuition or creativity, or having compassion or understanding. Sometimes Pisces Midheaven are dreamers, or they will be like the inspiring one who like gives people something to feel like they like. Your work sometimes will make people feel inspired, and that is something that Pisces Midheaven sometimes will do. Sometimes too, Pisces Midheaven people do work that you can get lost in. So the modern ruler of Pisces is Neptune. So you could do things that deal with Neptune stuff, which is like stories and otherworldly things and healing and dreams and like makeup or things that give an illusion, or setting a scene or setting a vibe. Now, because it's also ruled by Jupiter in traditional astrology, Pisces Midheaven can do stuff that deals with like somehow learning spirituality, or learning or taking in spiritual things, or again, like being creative and getting lost in something, right? So that can be a Reiki session. It could be some kind of creative thing you do. Pisces can be very, very creative. So any kind of creative pursuit, whether it's creating a beautiful meal or writing or acting or singing or anything, Pisces is going to have a definite emphasis on the creative things that are a little bit outside of this world. Sometimes it's going to be more healing and spirituality and empathy and compassion, but other times it's really going to be more like the vibe and the stuff you get lost in. Now, other Pisces type things that are not like you're not going to hear about all the time is Pisces usually have an interesting relationship with details. So either the Pisces Midheaven will hate details and not want to deal with them, or they will be a genius at them, one or the other. And sometimes with Pisces, we see jobs that are more like whimsical, like an antique dealer, or like tarot reader, or like someone who has like a shop with a bunch of weird collectible things that are like kind of off the beaten path. Jobs that are kind of off the beaten path, that are just totally different and enchanting in a way, like snake charmer, or anyone who might work at a circus, or like again, that it kind of falls in that category of like taking you to another world, taking you to another realm. We can also see people who work with altered states of consciousness. And again, I think the key word for Pisces in Midheaven is inspiration, and finding that field where you can sort of lose control or lose yourself in something and in a way that is positive and functions well in your career. So, for Pisces Midheaven, sometimes it's about connection and meaning and purpose. I think this Midheaven, more than any other, really does kind of need purpose. And it's like, this is a Midheaven that can like tap into your intuition or tap into your creativity or inspire people. But sometimes because of that, I see in Virgo, that's not the comfort zone. The comfort zone for the Pisces Midheaven sometimes is getting all the information, knowing exactly what the next step is, reverse engineering, having a plan. And sometimes with the Pisces Midheaven, that's not what the world wants from you. The world wants to hear a story, or to hear a metaphor, or to, not get stuck in those literal details. Yeah. Okay. So that is Pisces. Now, I think I said I would talk about something at the end. Midheaven versus North Node, I think, is something I wanted to talk about, because I think this gets confused a lot. I think a lot of people, here's what a lot of people do with astrology. They start following astrology. I did this. They go, oh, my North Node is my purpose. I better figure it out. And then they think their North Node is their career. The North Node is not your career. Sometimes you will use your North Node in your work. Sometimes you will not. Sometimes following your North Node is what will make you happy. And sometimes you don't use your North Node in your career or your job. And so this is what people do wrong, is they think, well, because they hear other astrologers say your North Node is your purpose, which I just don't really feel like it is. I think the North Node is the patterns we're here to learn. And we can take baby steps on that. Even baby steps towards your North Node might be therapeutic for you. It might be helpful and bring balance. To me, the North Node is not your career. And I think people have that wrong because they hear that it's purpose. And if we just think of how the South Node is behind the Earth and the North Node is in front of the Earth when it comes to how the Earth is moving, like through space, this can really make it make a little bit more sense, because it's like the South Node behaviors and patterns in modern and evolutionary astrology is what we're leaving behind, what we're letting go of, what we're releasing, what worked in a past life and is not going to work in this life. The North Node kind of tells us the direction we're heading, or what we're here to get more accustomed to. So the North Node is out of our comfort zone, and it's usually not what we want to do, but when we do it, we feel better, or we feel happier, or we have a sense of peace, or it helps us overcome that block. Okay, the midheaven is what we are to aspire to in career. It describes our approach to our job, especially if your midheaven is your sign on the cusp of the 10th house. That's really going to show what job, how you approach work, right? Are you the exciting one? Are you the one who tells jokes? Are you the passive one who just goes with the flow at work, which is going to be different than your personality? But if you're like, what's my career? What am I on the right path? The North Node may not necessarily tell you always exactly if you're on the right path. Usually the North Node is elusive and it's harder to grab onto because the nodes have an invisible quality. Now the midheaven is also not visible, but it doesn't have the same sort of karmic confusion that the nodes do. The nodes have a name in astrology. They're shadow grabbers, right? So the planets are grahas, which is like they have oomph, they have gravity, but the nodes do not. And so for this reason, sometimes we get stuck in trying to figure out our North Node, but it's elusive and the solution doesn't always come. This is actually why I decided maybe I won't do a North Node course, which I was thinking about recently, is because the more I tried to pin down the nodes, the more I felt like this course would never end if I tried to teach it. Like we would never be done, and there would always be more questions. And so, hold on one second. Okay. So back to the difference between the North Node and the Midheaven. Here's a quick way that I want you to consider it just to simplify things. And this is what I always tell people, is when it comes to your whole life and what you want to do to be happy, try to act like the sign on your North Node. Try to act like that sign, just a little bit. And in work, act like the sign on your Midheaven. So for me, my North Node's in Taurus, my Midheaven's Gemini. So in life, to be happy, I need to act like a Taurus. For career fulfillment, I need to act like a Gemini. Now, that can always go too far, so it's not cut and dry. And when it comes to using the astrology chart to reach your highest potential, I think it's best to test and measure, because that's how you know. When you test and measure doing X, Y, or Z in your career versus doing it in your purpose. I mean, the thing is that a lot of people will come to an astrologer and be like, what's my purpose? And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Let's break that down into some smaller pieces, because our purpose is kind of like something we go through our whole life to figure out, and unveiling and uncovering that mystery is one of the reasons I think we're here. So to ask an astrologer that question, it's too big of a question to ask a human being, because human beings can get it wrong, and your purpose will be revealed to you from within. And I know what it feels like to feel lost and to feel like you don't know what the next step is supposed to be. But sometimes looking at the astrology chart isn't always the right thing to do when we're feeling stuck. And the crazy thing, guys, is sometimes when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, and you just reach within yourself to find the best solution you can with the tools that you have, the thing you end up doing ends up being true to your chart. Sometimes that happens. And that's actually the thing that I wish more people understood, is that if you get stuck and you're like, I don't know what to do, I'm just going to do this thing. This thing is probably what your chart says you were going to do. And sometimes going to an astrologer doesn't solve that, because Why? Let me think. Because it's like the things that are really, really true to your chart, you don't have to try. You don't have to find some freaking emerald tablet to be revealed to you. The stuff that the work that you're really natural at is going to be the job you're already doing. Now, I know a lot of you watching this are like, but I don't want to stay in that job. I want to build a better life, or I want a new life, or I want to do something different, or I know this isn't the only thing. I know there's more out there for me. And the thing that I wish more of my clients knew is that you are the only person who can really, really deep down know what that is going to be. And it has to be through your own experience. Because it's so hard for me to like put this into words. Because your approach to life might change the outcome, right? And when we think of astrology, we often are going to think of like fate and free will, like what am I meant for? And how do I align with the life I'm meant for? And if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat. But sometimes you're already living the life you're meant for. And the solution isn't always the different job, the different house, the different place to live. Sometimes it's being able to see it for what it is. And that's another way sometimes astrology can help us, because it can help us feel or see in the chart that this actually is the right path. And sometimes that can be really inspiring and motivating. And for other people, sometimes that is not. For other people, it is a little bit more challenging. All right, so I'm checking out the comments now, the ones I did not see yet. No. Violet's asking, would these things you say about the Libra Midheaven also apply to a Venus placement in the 10th house Cancer Midheaven? The answer is no, because the planet in the house is different than the sign on the Midheaven. Let's see. Okay, so Tamela is asking, can you explain nodal reversal? I have a video on this. I think it's called nodal opposition, nodal return and opposition. So this is, I'm guessing you're talking about in transit, when the transiting nodes are opposite of your nodes. This is an important time, and both the North Node, conjunct North Node, and the nodal opposition are usually redirections. And I'm going to be honest, this one's kind of hard to understand, because sometimes we have other transits happening at the same time. So I actually did this recently. I went back through my life and looked at what happened on my nodal returns and oppositions, and I couldn't figure it out. And I can usually figure things out pretty well. So my advice on looking at the nodal reversal and the nodal opposition is, don't actually read too much into it. Just know that some of the themes of the sign where you have your north and south node might show up during those times, but that it doesn't always it's not like, the angels sing and now you know your purpose. Sometimes just something important happens during those stages of life. And that's what I would say, is they're kind of important changes. Cupid's Weapon says, I didn't realize my purpose until my nodal return after the Saturn return. So when was that? Because wouldn't that be like, were you like 48 or something? And sometimes, sometimes we also get a lesson, a Saturn lesson. This one's kind of cool to know about. There is a Saturn lesson that comes when, let me think, the first Saturn square after the Saturn return. So that's usually for most people like 36, 38. That is usually a big life lesson that sometimes factors into your purpose. And what else was I going to say about that? Also, people who have a strong Saturn, like your Saturn ruled, Saturn is your sun, moon, or rising, or you like have Saturn like conjunct your sun, moon, or rising or something. Or if Saturn is in connection to your midheaven planet, the planet that rules your midheaven, you're more likely to be a late bloomer in career. So it's just more natural that you're not going to hit your stride probably until you're at least 36. And for someone watching this who, if you're upset about that, don't worry, I'm that person. I'm that person who hated that I didn't know what I was going to be doing when I was young, and I just knew how lost I was. It sucked. But just know, the thing to know that can be kind of positive and optimistic about that is that wherever you have Saturn, again, you tend to be a late bloomer. So if you are finding that you are younger and things aren't working out in that area, don't let that define you. Okay? Don't let that define your life, because there's so much potential to be really strong and a like powerhouse when you're older in your career. Violet, which concept? Which one were we talking about? And also when it comes to like finding your purpose and rising to your highest potential, one of the things I recommend, if you don't know what to do and you're totally lost and you're like, I'm trying to figure everything else out, blah, 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 then just build a skill. Pick one. Just pick one, because the thing that you pick is going to be the right thing. And if it's not the right thing, eventually you will know. But the thing is, and this is what a lot of my clients sometimes do, I did for a long time, a lot of spiritual people do, is they put off picking something because they're afraid they're going to make the wrong choice. And that's the worst thing you can do, because let's say 5 years go by and you didn't pick something. 5 years later, you're in the same place. But if you just picked something, a year later, you'll know if that thing is right or not. And then you pick something else. And then you pick something else. This is what I did. I picked a lot of different things, and a lot of that stuff is wrong. But sometimes you have to actually pick the thing, see how bad it feels to know how wrong it is for you. And I have done that a few times. And don't feel bad if you have had to do that, because that's part of life, is to figure it out. And I think that a lot of us, who watch videos are wishing we were like the next Michael Jackson, or like the next, I'm old, but like the next Beyonce, or the next, someone really famous and really, who has like, I don't know what you would call this, but like a very clearly designed chart where it's like they have a very clear purpose that starts when they're very young. It's almost decided for them. And right, because like the Christina Aguileras and the Britney Spears and the Beyoncés, they were all, and it doesn't have to be singing, but they were all starting when they were kids, and they worked their whole lives for this one thing. And there's lots of other people who tried to do that and didn't necessarily make it, right? So most of us who are trying to figure out our career and we're not 5 years old are not the Beyoncés of the world. We are not the we are not the Beyoncés of the world. We are not the Christina Aguileras of the world, which means sometimes we have a little more wiggle room, because, and that's another thing that as a spiritual person, and when you're working with the midheaven, is that it's not like you can't make the wrong choice, but the way you find out if something's the right choice is just by doing it and putting your whole heart into it. That is how you learn if it's either the wrong choice, or if it is like the wrong choice, or like I just lost my thought. Or if it's maybe the right choice but not done the right way. And this is the only way we really know. And so this is why I have to always give this caveat whenever I'm teaching the Midheaven in astrology, because what I don't want is for you guys to go, oh, let me figure out my Midheaven even more. Let me figure out my North Node more before I take a step. The one thing that I've done right, the only thing that I've done right, I think, in my whole life is that I wasn't afraid to just jump in, right? When I was doing tarot, I wasn't afraid to jump in and start reading tarot. When I started doing astrology, I wasn't afraid to jump in and start doing my reports in my Facebook group or, readings with people, because I knew that, I think innately, I just knew that you have to kind of do it to sort of see how it's going to be. All right, let's see some of these comments here. Cupid's weapon is Saturn ruled as well. And Saturn and Aquarius in the 9th, as well as North Node and Capricorn in the 9th. I take work seriously but feel unbalanced and erratic if I stay at a job long enough. Interesting. Yeah, that Aquarius energy probably. And then we have, hey, Leo Midheaven, Saturn's in first house. Retrograde, Scorpio. All right, so Violet's answering me, I think. The relationship between the house and the planet within the house, I felt a resonance with your description of Aquarius Midheaven and my Uranus, MC Cancer, my Venus, and Cancer Midheaven. Well, a brief overview here is that the planet in the 10th house is going to describe something you do in your career. Literally. Mars is defending or fighting or doing something active. Mercury's communicating. The sun is commanding attention, etc. If you don't have planets in your 10th house, it's okay. I have a video on planets in the 10th house you can watch. But the relationship, you always, whenever you're looking at a point in the chart, you want to start with the ruler of that sign, where it is. So you need to look at, where's the moon? Where's the moon? What is it doing? What house is it in? What sign is it in? Figure that out. That might help you with the Cancer stuff, just to understand it better. Okay, so my North Node, Sun in Aquarius, sextiles my Midheaven and Sag. That's good to have a planet sextiling the Midheaven. I don't think Venus in Pisces is a problem at all, because Venus is exalted in Pisces. So, yeah, that's all I can say for now on that. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Cupid's weapon. Yeah, these videos are from a while back. I did planets in the 10th house. I think I did planets conjunct the North Node, planets conjunct the South Node. And I did a few videos on the Midheaven. So you can probably just type in Midheaven or 10th house on the channel and find a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's totally okay not to have planets in the 10th house. This does not mean you don't have a career. It's not a negative thing at all. You just look to, since you're a Leo Midheaven, you look at the sun. Where is the sun? And find what house it's in, what sign it's in. That's going to tell, and what aspects to it. That's going to tell you about the career. Yeah, I can understand that, Kira. All right, guys, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. If you want to book a private reading, there is a link in the description for that. And you can also as always, you can binge watch this channel. We have done a lot of fun videos lately on a lot of fun topics. We did a bunch of videos on the North Node. And there is one on Jupiter entering Gemini. You should watch that, because it's soon. It's almost now. Let me see. Oh, it is. Jupiter's in Gemini. everybody. While we were talking, Jupiter entered Gemini. So at some point during this live, that transition was made. Welcome to Jupiter and Gemini. Check that video out because it's going to be, it actually tells you what to expect right now, because when I did that video for all the signs, I did it at the moment Jupiter enters Gemini. So if you're like, you're missing a energy report and you're like, I didn't get one, right? Because we talked about the Midheaven today, then seriously go watch my video. I'm going to show you guys where it is really quick on the channel so you can find it. So let me just pull it up because this is a perfect thing to spend your weekend on. At least that's how I feel about astrology. Okay, so here we are on YouTube. We're going to go to the whoops, that's not going to take me there. This will though. The channel, and we see this is the channel, right? So here we go. New growth. It's the most recent video. And by the time you watch this, it might be further down in the pile, right? Because depending on when you see this. But it's here. New growth. Jupiter enters Gemini, all signs. This video is 1 hour and 43 minutes. It has timestamps. You click on it. It will take you to the video. It will take you. Hold on. Can you guys see it? Hold on. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Let me redo this because I messed that up. Let's try this again the right way. Okay, this is what you see when you're on the channel. Then you go down here to the most recent videos by Saffron, and you see this one with the yellow top and the pink on the bottom, Jupiter Gemini. This is Jupiter enters Gemini, all signs. And when you click on it,
I'm going to show you how to take this old dresser drawer.
There's going to be an ad. We're going to skip that. And this is going to be the video. And it, like I said, it has timestamps. So you can go to your rising sign and you can watch it for your sun, moon, or rising sign, just depending on, you know, I always watch all of them and then just see which one resonates more. Because some people relate more to their moon and some people relate more to their sun. And so your rising is always, though, going to tell you what it means in life, like what it means in your life, what area of life Jupiter's entering based on your rising. But if like maybe you don't know what time you're born, or if you want to add layers to the understanding, you can watch your sun and you can watch your moon. So that's how you do that. And let's go ahead, just for good measure, I'll just pop a link in the chat here. So if you want to go straight to that video, you can. And as always, everybody, thank you for everything you do to support this channel and everything you have done to support this channel, which, you know, some of you has been for a long time of watching. You know, watching the videos is the best thing you can do to support the channel, but not just watching, but like commenting on the lives and liking the videos and making comments on them and just doing everything you guys do to support. It is always appreciated. So happy Jupiter in Gemini. I hope you have tons of new growth, and I hope it brings you lots of prosperity and blessings and expansion as Jupiter can. But I hope it doesn't bring you too many things to do, as Jupiter and Gemini can bring. But that is what I have for you. And I will see you beautiful souls in the next video. Bye.